The power behind every choice you make is far greater than most people realize. Every decision, no matter how small it appears in the moment, is an investment in the person you are becoming. Most of us think of choices as isolated events, but they are actually building blocks, stacking on top of one another to form character, discipline, and identity. When Simon Sinek speaks about leadership, purpose, and vision, he often reminds us that our actions reveal what we value. A single choice may seem insignificant, but repeated over days, months, and years, it shapes the trajectory of a life. Your choices are like votes, and each vote moves you closer either to the best version of yourself or farther away from it. What makes choices so powerful is that they are always within your control. You cannot decide how circumstances unfold, what challenges appear, or what others say or do. But you can choose your response. You can choose your mindset. You can choose how you show up, even when situations are difficult or uncertain. That ability alone makes you powerful. It means you are not defined by your past or restricted by your present. You are constantly in the process of becoming, and that process is driven by the choices you make every day. Often, people underestimate the impact of the small choices. The decision to wake up a little earlier, to read something that nourishes your mind, to put in effort when no one notices, to speak with kindness, to take responsibility instead of making excuses. These moments seem quiet, ordinary, and unremarkable, yet they carry the most weight. Big achievements are simply the visible outcome of hundreds of small, consistent decisions. Great leaders, resilient individuals, and fulfilled people are not shaped by a single grand moment, but by the accumulation of choices made when the world wasn't watching. Choice also reveals commitment. When you choose discipline over comfort, growth over fear, and integrity over convenience, you show yourself what you stand for. You start living with intention rather than drifting on autopilot. And when you live with intention, confidence grows, not a loud, external confidence, but a steady inner assurance that you can trust yourself. You know that your actions align with your values, and that alignment creates unshakable strength. Every choice also has a ripple effect. The way you treat people influences how they treat others. The effort you put into your work inspires those around you. The courage you display in moments of uncertainty gives permission for others to be courageous too. Choices are never personal, they extend outward. When you decide to be better, you lift the people around you. When you elevate your standards, you raise the environment you operate in. That is why personal responsibility is not just about self-improvement. It becomes an act of service to the world. But the true power of choice is that it gives you ownership of your life. When you understand that who you become is based on what you choose again and again, you stop waiting for change and start creating it. You stop hoping for opportunities and begin preparing for them. You stop blaming circumstances and start directing your own path. That shift from passive to active, from reactive to intentional, is where transformation begins. Every choice counts because every choice expresses who you are becoming. And when you make choices that align with your purpose, your future begins to take shape long before you step into it. Designing the future you want to become begins with understanding that your life is not something that simply happens to you. It is something you actively shape. Many people move through their days reacting to circumstances, following routines they never questioned, and making choices based on habit rather than intention. But when you take a moment to step back and envision the person you truly want to be, you start realizing that the future is not built on chance. It is created through clarity, purpose, and deliberate action. Simon Sinek often emphasizes the importance of knowing your why, because without a sense of direction, it's easy to drift. When you define the life you want to live and the qualities you want to embody, every day becomes an opportunity to move closer to that vision. Designing your future is not about predicting every detail or controlling every outcome. It is about setting a direction, a compass that guides your decisions even when the path ahead is uncertain. When you are clear about who you want to become, whether that person is more disciplined, more compassionate, more courageous, or more resilient, you begin to filter your choices through that identity. You start asking yourself, does this action align with the future I want? That simple question becomes a powerful tool because it turns every moment into a chance to invest in your growth. One of the most important parts of shaping your future is accepting responsibility for your potential. It requires recognizing that you are capable of more than your past accomplishments or failures suggest. You have strengths, talents, and possibilities that may not yet be visible, even to yourself. When you commit to becoming the best version of who you are, you acknowledge that your future is not fixed. It is flexible, evolving, and responsive to the choices you make now. This mindset opens the door to progress. You don't have to wait for motivation, the perfect moment, or external validation. You build the future one intentional step at a time. It is also essential to understand that designing your future requires patience. Growth doesn't happen overnight. Transformation is not immediate. The process involves persistence, setbacks, adjustments, and learning. But with every effort, every disciplined decision, and every act of courage, you move closer to the version of yourself you aspire to be. The small wins add up. The habits you build start to shape your identity. The simple act of trying reinforces your commitment to your future. Ultimately, the future you want to become starts with believing that it is possible. It starts with imagining a life where your actions reflect your values and your choices reflect your purpose. When you decide that your future is worth designing, you take control of your story. You become an active participant in your growth, not just an observer of your circumstances. You begin to live with intention, clarity, and direction, and over time, the person you envision becomes the person you are. Small decisions often go unnoticed in the moment, but they carry a weight that becomes impossible to ignore over time. People tend to focus on big goals, major achievements, and dramatic turning points, believing that these are the events that shape their lives. Yet the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. It is the consistent, everyday choices that create the foundation for success, character, and personal growth. When Simon Sinek talks about leadership and purpose, he often emphasizes consistency over intensity. Greatness is rarely the result of a single extraordinary effort. It is built through small, repeated actions that slowly transform who you are and what you are capable of. Every day offers countless moments where you can choose between progress and stagnation. These moments are subtle, choosing to read instead of scroll, choosing to practice instead of procrastinate, choosing to speak with kindness instead of reacting impulsively. None of these choices feel monumental on their own, but their combined impact is tremendous. Over weeks and months, these small decisions begin to shape your habits, and your habits shape your identity. You become someone who follows through, someone who grows, someone who respects their own potential. The opposite is just as true. Neglecting the small decisions leads to patterns that gradually pull you away from who you want to become. The power of small decisions also lies in their accessibility. You don't need perfect conditions to start. You don't need extraordinary resources or grand opportunities. All you need is awareness and willingness. Every person, no matter their background or circumstances, has the ability to make small choices that move them toward a better version of themselves. These choices become a form of self-leadership. They show that you value your future enough to take action now, even if the reward isn't immediate. Because small decisions often lack visible results at first, many people underestimate their value. They give up too early, expecting quick transformation, but the real magic happens quietly. A single workout doesn't change your body, but consistent movement strengthens you. One conversation doesn't repair a relationship, but repeated effort rebuilds trust. 1 hour of study doesn't create mastery, but daily practice builds expertise. Small actions compound in the same way that tiny drops of water eventually carve through rock, through persistence, not force. Another powerful aspect of small decisions is that they strengthen discipline. Every time you choose the slightly harder but more meaningful option, you reinforce your ability to choose well again. Discipline is not about grand sacrifices. It is about small, steady commitments repeated over time. Those choices eventually become automatic, turning discipline into habit and habit into identity. In the end, the massive impact of small decisions comes down to this. They create momentum. Once you start making choices that align with your goals and values, you build a sense of progress that fuels further action. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to see that change is possible. And eventually, when you look back, you realize that the most significant transformations in your life didn't come from big moments, but from the small decisions you made consistently, even when no one was watching. Building habits that shape your identity is one of the most powerful and transformative processes in your personal development journey. While motivation may give you the initial push, habits are what carry you forward long after the motivation fades. They become the invisible structure holding your life together, guiding your thoughts, actions, and responses without conscious effort. When Simon Sinek talks about consistency, purpose, and leadership, the underlying message is clear. Who you are becoming is determined far less by what you do occasionally and far more by what you do consistently. Habits are not just routines. They are expressions of identity. Every repeated action is a statement about the person you believe yourself to be. The connection between habits and identity is bidirectional. At first, you choose your habits, but eventually your habits choose for you. The way you spend your mornings, how you approach challenges, how you interact with others, and how you treat your goals all emerge from habits you've built over time. When you repeatedly choose discipline, you begin to see yourself as a disciplined person. When you consistently show kindness, you see yourself as compassionate. When you keep promises to yourself, even small ones, you start believing that you are someone who follows through. This identity-based confidence becomes a quiet but unshakable strength, influencing future choices in a positive way. The challenge, however, is that habits do not form overnight. They develop slowly, often starting with actions so small that they almost seem insignificant. But that is their beauty. You don't need to overhaul your life to transform your identity. You simply need to commit to small, repeated behaviors that align with the person you want to become. Whether it's reading a few pages each day, practicing gratitude, or dedicating just 10 minutes to a skill you want to improve, these small actions create momentum. Over time, they become automatic part of your nature rather than something you must force. Many people struggle with building habits because they rely too heavily on motivation. Motivation is unpredictable. It rises and falls based on emotions, energy, and circumstances. Habits, on the other hand, are stable. They don't care whether you feel inspired or tired, confident or uncertain. Once established, they carry you through days when motivation is low. That's why habits are so essential to growth. They replace emotional fluctuation with structured consistency. This consistency becomes the backbone of transformation. Another important aspect of habit building is understanding that identity-driven habits last longer than outcome-driven ones. When you tie a habit to a result like losing weight, earning more money, or achieving recognition, the moment the result becomes difficult or distant, your commitment weakens. But when your habit is tied to identity, I am someone who takes care of my body. I am someone who continually improves. I am someone who acts with integrity. The habit becomes self-sustaining. You stick with it not because of the external reward, but because acting otherwise would contradict who you believe yourself to be. Every habit also strengthens your relationship with yourself. When you follow through on commitments, even tiny ones, you build trust. This trust is crucial because the most successful people are those who can rely on themselves. They don't wait for perfect circumstances. They don't depend on external pressure. Their internal reliability is what sets them apart. When you decide to build habits intentionally, you are essentially saying that your future self deserves consistency and effort from your present self. That decision alone changes the trajectory of your life. It is equally important to recognize that building habits requires patience. You will have days when you slip, days when you feel slow, and days when the progress feels invisible. But these moments are not signs of failure, they are part of the process. What matters is returning to the habit again and again, reinforcing the identity you are working toward. Growth hides in repetition, confidence hides in commitment, strength hides in persistence. In time, habits become the architecture of your character. They influence the way you think, the choices you make, the opportunities you attract, and the challenges you can handle. You no longer need to force yourself into becoming the person you want to be. Your daily actions naturally guide you there. This is the greatest gift habits offer. They transform identity from a distant aspiration into a lived reality. Ultimately, the habits you build today determine the identity you embody tomorrow. When you choose habits aligned with your highest values and deepest goals, you are casting votes for the person you are becoming. You are shaping a version of yourself that is stronger, more disciplined, more focused, and more aligned with your purpose. And once your habits reflect your aspirations, your identity transforms not through dramatic effort, but through the steady rhythm of daily choices that quietly, consistently lead you toward your best self. Choosing growth over comfort every day is a commitment that defines the trajectory of your life. Comfort is tempting because it feels safe, predictable, and familiar. It requires little effort and protects you from discomfort or uncertainty. But comfort, when chosen repeatedly, becomes a barrier. It keeps you rooted in place, repeating the same patterns, avoiding challenges, and limiting your potential. Growth, on the other hand, demands courage. It asks you to step into situations where the outcome isn't guaranteed, where you might stumble or struggle, and where progress often feels slow. Yet it is in these moments of challenge that your character strengthens, your skills expand, and your identity evolves. Choosing growth means choosing to become more than you were yesterday. Growth is not a dramatic leap, but a continuous series of small decisions that push you beyond your current limits. It's waking up earlier to work toward a goal when your body wants to stay in bed. It's speaking up even when your voice shakes. It's trying again after a failure rather than giving in to discouragement. These decisions are not glamorous or easy, but they are powerful. Each time you choose the harder path, the one that stretches you, you build resilience. You prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort, and with every challenge overcome, your confidence rises. This confidence is not based on perfection, but on evidence that you can endure, adapt, and keep moving forward. The greatest transformations often occur in the moments you are tempted to stay comfortable, but choose growth instead. Comfort may offer temporary relief, but it never brings lasting fulfillment. Growth requires effort, but it rewards you with a deeper sense of purpose and direction. When you choose growth, you align your actions with your aspirations. You stop living passively and start living intentionally. You become someone who doesn't wait for the perfect moment, but creates opportunities through consistent effort. Choosing growth also means embracing uncertainty. Growth never happens in environments where everything is predictable. It requires exploring the unknown, trying new things, and stepping into situations where success is not guaranteed. This uncertainty can be intimidating, but it is also where possibilities exist. Every new skill you learn, every challenge you face, and every fear you confront expands your world. You discover strengths you didn't know you had, and capabilities you never imagined. You grow not just in skill, but in wisdom and self-awareness. Another powerful aspect of choosing growth is understanding that discomfort is a sign of progress, not failure. When you feel challenged, stretched, or unsure, it means you are operating beyond your usual limits. This is where your mind becomes sharper, your discipline becomes stronger, and your potential becomes more visible. The discomfort you feel today becomes the confidence you carry tomorrow. Growth turns temporary struggle into permanent strength. Choosing growth over comfort also sets an example for others. People around you notice when you take risks, when you commit to your goals, and when you rise after setbacks. Your actions inspire them to examine their own choices. Just as comfort is contagious, so is growth. When you choose growth consistently, you create an environment where effort, courage, and improvement become normal. You become a source of motivation not only for yourself, but for everyone who witnesses your journey. Ultimately, choosing growth over comfort is a daily decision, not a one-time act. It's a mindset, a discipline, and a commitment to becoming the best version of yourself. Even on days when progress feels slow or obstacles feel heavy, every choice to grow moves you forward. Over time, these choices reshape your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who doesn't shrink in the face of difficulty, but rises to meet it. And that identity becomes the foundation for every future possibility. Choosing growth over comfort is choosing a life of purpose rather than a life of stagnation. It is choosing to evolve, to push boundaries, and to build a future that reflects your true potential. When you make that choice consistently, your life changes not all at once, but steadily, powerfully, and undeniably.